It all began with another argument, the kind that burns everything it touches. The spark, as always, was money, or rather, the constant lack of it. That morning, Marcus sat at the breakfast table talking about his latest obsession, the Grand Lakeview mansion he called his legacy project. He described it like it was his destiny, not just another construction site. "Naomi, I need another $75,000 by the end of the day," he said flatly, without even lifting his eyes from his plate of eggs. He tossed out that number like he was asking me to pass the salt. I froze mid-sip, my mug trembling slightly in my hand. "Marcus," I managed, "where exactly are we supposed to get that kind of money? We're already drowning in debt. The bank is breathing down our necks, and my salary barely covers the bills." He finally looked up, his gaze cold and distant, as if the woman across from him were an obstacle instead of a partner. "I'm not asking, Naomi. I've already finalized the deal with the contractors. The money has to be there tonight." The word finalized echoed in my mind like a metal clang. "You made another decision without me?" My voice cracked with disbelief. "Marcus, this house is draining everything we have." He slammed his palm against the table, rattling the silverware. "That house is our future. You don't understand the value of appearances. I'm building a career, not tending tomatoes in your little garden." "My garden," I snapped, "at least feeds us." It was the wrong thing to say. His chair screeched across the floor as he shot up, face twisted with fury. "I'm done listening to you whine about things you don't understand. Get dressed. We're leaving." "Leaving?" I asked, startled. "To sign some papers," he muttered. "And leave your phone and purse here. This is business. Confidential." Something in his tone froze me. I'd learned over the years that resistance only fed his temper. So, like I always did, I obeyed. I slipped on a jacket and followed him to the car. The drive was silent. The city faded behind us, replaced by stretches of empty road and weather-beaten shops. Every question I asked was met with a dismissive wave. His jaw was tight, his eyes fixed ahead, and I could feel the storm brewing under that calm exterior. 30 minutes later, he turned off onto a narrow rural road, the kind that led nowhere. My heart started to pound. The car stopped beside a broken bus shelter surrounded by open fields. "Get out," he said quietly. "What?" "Get out." I stared at him, confused, waiting for a hint of humor, but there was none. Slowly, I opened the door and stepped out, the wind whipping my hair across my face. He didn't even turn off the engine. He just stared at me through the windshield. "Marcus, what is this? Who are we meeting?" He smiled, a cruel, unfamiliar smile that chilled me to my bones. "There's no meeting, Naomi. There's just you and your money problem. You didn't want to help me, so figure it out yourself." The realization hit like ice water. "What do you mean?" "I mean," he said, his voice low and final, "I'm done. I'm leaving you. And you can start your new life right here." The tire screamed against the gravel as he sped off, throwing a cloud of dust into the air. I stood frozen on the roadside, unable to move, unable to believe what had just happened. For a long moment, I waited, certain he'd circle back, laughing, saying it was all some twisted joke. But the sound of the engine faded until there was nothing left but silence and the distant hum of wind across the empty fields. I slid onto the shaky wooden bench of the shelter, my hands trembling, my chest hollow. 15 years of marriage, gone in seconds. I didn't even notice her at first, the elderly woman sitting in the corner, wrapped in a heavy coat, motionless except for the faint movement of her hands on a cane. Her dark glasses hid her eyes, and her stillness made her look carved from stone. I tried to stifle my sobs, but after a few minutes she spoke, her voice dry and rasping, "Stop crying. Tears won't fix what he did." I turned, startled. "Husband kicked you out, didn't he?" she asked. All I could manage was a broken nod. "They're all the same," she said. "One day they call you their world, the next they toss you aside like trash. Then, after a pause, her head tilted slightly. Would you like to make him regret it? I blinked through my tears. What? She smiled faintly beneath those black lenses. My driver will be here soon. Pretend you're my granddaughter. We'll leave together. You'll have warmth, food, and a chance to make that man wish he never met you. Her words sounded absurd, impossible, yet strangely persuasive. And then, right on cue, a black luxury car rolled to a stop in front of the shelter, the kind of car that belonged in another world. A man in a crisp suit stepped out and opened the door. Ms. Vance, he said respectfully. The old woman stood, leaning on her cane. Darius, wait. My granddaughter is coming with us today. He looked at me, expression unreadable, waiting for instruction. Fear warred with exhaustion inside me, but the thought of staying there alone, abandoned, terrified, was worse. I stood, walked to the car, and stepped into a life I didn't yet realize was about to change everything. The car glided forward so smoothly it felt unreal, like I'd stepped out of my old life and into someone else's dream. Fields slid by outside the tinted window, trees, empty roads, fragments of a world that had just spat me out. Inside, it was all silence and leather and the soft, controlled breathing of the old woman beside me. She didn't say a word. Neither did I. I had no phone. No wallet. No plan. Just a stranger in dark glasses who somehow sounded like she'd seen this exact scene play out 1,000 times before. I kept expecting her to ask questions. Where are you from? What did he do? Why were you crying like that? Nothing. She just sat there, hands folded over her cane, head turned slightly toward the window, like she could see more than I could. After a while, the car left the main road and turned down a long, private lane. We rolled past a tall, solid fence with cameras on every corner. The gates opened without a sound, swallowing us whole. It wasn't a house we pulled up to. It was a fortress. Dark brick. No flowers, no welcome mat, no hint of warmth. Just money, power, and security. The driver, Darius, stepped out and opened the door for her first. Ms. Vance, he said quietly. She got out, then tilted her head in my direction. Come on, granddaughter, she said dryly. No use freezing on the curb. Inside, the air smelled of polish and silence. High ceilings, expensive furniture, but no family photos, no knickknacks, no framed memories. Just neutral colors and precise lines, like a showroom no one truly lived in. Sit, she said, pointing her cane toward a stiff-looking sofa in a huge living room. I perched on the edge, feeling very small in my borrowed identity. The old woman stayed standing in the center of the room for a moment, perfectly still. Then she did something that made my skin prickle. She reached up, removed her dark glasses, and looked directly into my eyes. She wasn't blind. Her gaze was sharp, clear, and unsettlingly intelligent, the kind of eyes that had seen too much and forgotten nothing. My name is Eleanor Vance, she said, her voice suddenly firm, polished, and absolutely in control. The frail old bus stop act was gone. I swallowed. Naomi, I whispered, instinctively. Her lips twitched. I know. She walked over to the sideboard, poured a glass of water, and handed it to me with steady hands. Drink. You'll need your strength. I stared at her, baffled. How do you know my name? Eleanor sat down opposite me, cane resting against the arm of her chair. In this city, Naomi, I make it my business to know who matters, and who thinks they matter, she said calmly. You are 38. You work as an administrator at the regional manufacturing hub. Your husband, Marcus, is a small-time council official with big-time ambitions and more ego than sense. My fingers tightened around the glass. How? Because I watch, she cut in. And I listen. People talk freely around someone they believe can't see them. Especially in public places. Especially when they're showing off. She leaned back, studying me like I was a case file. Your husband has been trying to claw his way to the top for years. that ridiculous lake house? It's not about comfort. It's bait. A stage set to impress the right people. He's been bleeding you dry to build it, savings, loans, every scrap of income you brought in. And now, when the walls are closing in, he decided you and your old apartment were the easiest things to get rid of. I felt sick. My parents' place, it's the only thing that was really mine, I muttered. And he sees it as collateral, Eleanor replied flatly. He's not a visionary. He's a parasite. A petty one, but still dangerous when cornered. She leaned forward, her eyes like ice. I will help you. The words hit me harder than I expected. Why? I asked, voice barely above a whisper. Because I can, she said simply. Because I enjoy watching cowards choke on their own schemes. Because men like your husband are tediously predictable. I stared at her. Help me how? Eleanor lifted a sleek, unopened box from the coffee table and pushed it toward me. New phone. New number. Clean. Only 2 contacts saved, mine and my lawyer's. From now on, if you need something, you call us. Not your husband. Not your friends. Not your mother. Us. My heart thudded. Your lawyer? Mr. Josiah Wells, she said. He'll handle your case. We'll fight for your apartment, your reputation, and anything else that still has your name on it. She held up a finger. But nothing is free in this life, Naomi. Not even rescue. There it was. The hook. The price. I felt it before she said the words. What do you want from me? Eleanor didn't flinch. A favor. One day, when I decide the time is right, I will ask you for something. It might be simple. It might be costly. You won't know until that day comes. Until then, you follow my instructions. Exactly. It sounded like a deal with the devil. But the devil was the only one offering me a hand while my husband had left me on the side of the road. If I say no? I asked. Then you can walk back to that bus stop, she said coolly. And wait for someone else to save you. If they ever do. Silence stretched between us. 15 years of marriage, and Marcus's last act was to dump me in the middle of nowhere with nothing. This woman, who owed me nothing, had pulled me out, given me water, a roof, a lawyer, a phone. He'd left me to crumble. She was handing me weapons. Deal, I said quietly. Eleanor smiled, not warmly, but with satisfaction, like a chess player who'd just claimed a key piece. I knew you were not entirely useless, she murmured. Then her expression shifted, turning sharp again. Now that we've agreed, it's time for your first task. My stomach tightened. What task? You're going home, she said. I blinked. Home? To Marcus? To your apartment. Her tone left no room for argument. You think he simply dropped you off and went to work on his speech? No. Men like him don't do anything halfway. If he was willing to leave you on the side of the road, he was willing to do worse. You need to see exactly how far he's already gone. Fear crawled up my spine. What if he's there? Eleanor shrugged. Then you'll finally see what you're dealing with. Not the version in your head, the real one. Go look your life in the face, Naomi. Then come back and tell me if you still want to play nice. She pressed a small remote on the table. Within a minute, Darius appeared in the doorway. Take her back to her building, she instructed. Wait nearby. She may need a ride back. Darius nodded without emotion. I stood up on unsteady legs, clutching the new phone like a lifeline. As I reached the doorway, Eleanor's voice stopped me. One more thing, she said. I turned. When you see what he's done, she said softly, almost gently, remember this, you didn't lose your life today. He just showed you who he's been all along. Her words followed me out of the house and into the car like a shadow. On the way back to the city, one thought kept beating inside my skull. If he could leave me on a roadside with nothing, what else was he capable of? I was about to find out. The city lights returned like a cruel reminder of what I'd lost. I sat in the back seat of the sleek car, staring blankly out the window as Darius drove, his face unreadable in the rearview mirror. The streets looked familiar but distant, like I'd stepped out of my own life and was now just passing through someone else's. "We're here," he said finally, pulling up in front of my apartment block. The air outside was colder than I remembered. I took a shaky breath, clutching my keys, the same keys I'd used for years, the same ones that had always opened the door to my parents' home. My sanctuary. My history. My only safety net. The building was quiet. Too quiet. I climbed the stairs, heart pounding, until I reached the third floor and stopped in front of my door, the brown leather-clad one with a small dent at the bottom I always meant to fix. For a second, I just stood there. Then I pushed the key into the top lock. It jammed halfway. I frowned, tried again, harder this time, but it wouldn't turn. The metal scraped uselessly. I switched to the second key, the bottom lock. Same thing. That's when the truth hit me. The locks were new. Panic punched through my chest. I tried the handle, banged on the door. "Marcus!" I shouted, voice echoing down the hallway. "Marcus, open the door." Silence. I hit the door again, harder this time. "Marcus, I know you're in there." A neighbor's door cracked open on the floor above. An old woman peeked out, saw me, and quickly shut it again. I pressed my forehead against the cold metal of the door, shaking. It felt like the world had tilted completely out of orbit. He'd changed the locks. He'd locked me out of my own home. My fingers trembled as I pulled out Eleanor's phone. There were only 2 numbers, hers and the lawyer's. I clicked on Mr. Wells. He answered on the first ring, his voice precise and calm. "Yes?" "It's Naomi," I said, breathless. He changed the locks. "I can't get in." "I expected that," he said flatly. "Call the police. Tell them unknown individuals have changed the locks on your apartment. Not a word about your husband. Do you understand? Unknown individuals." "What? Why?" "Because if you mention your husband, they'll call it a domestic matter and refuse to help. Do exactly as I say. I'll be there shortly." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. Then, with trembling hands, I dialed 911. The dispatcher's voice was flat, rehearsed. "Emergency services." "Yes, hi. Someone changed the locks on my apartment. I can't get in. I live at," I rattled off the address. "We'll send a patrol car," she said. "Stay where you are." The next 20 minutes felt like hours. I sat on the steps, hugging myself, staring at the door that had once meant safety. Finally, 2 officers appeared on the landing, one young and bored-looking, the other older with a face carved by years of apathy. "You called?" the younger one asked. "Yes. This is my apartment." I went to open the door, and my keys don't work. "The locks have been changed." The older officer raised an eyebrow. "Do you have identification or documents for the apartment?" "They're inside," I said helplessly. "I left my purse this morning." The young one smirked. "Ma'am, we can't just break down a door because you say it's yours. Maybe you sold it. Maybe your relatives live here now." Before I could argue, footsteps thundered up the stairs. The sound made my blood run cold. "Marcus." He appeared at the top landing, wearing his usual calm, confident expression, as if he'd just walked into a board meeting. And beside him, clinging to his arm, was a younger woman in a pristine gray business suit. Tiffany Chambers. The district attorney's daughter. I'd seen her before at council events, always perfectly composed, always smug. "Naomi," Marcus said smoothly, his voice dripping with false concern. "There you are. I've been looking everywhere. Why haven't you answered your phone?" He turned to the officers. Gentlemen, is there a problem? This is my wife. She's been going through a difficult time. I stared at him, stunned. You changed the locks on me. He ignored me and smiled at the officers instead. I was forced to, for safety reasons. You see, she's been having episodes lately. Tiffany's eyes gleamed as she tightened her grip on his arm. Around her neck hung a small gold chain with a white pearl pendant. My mother's pendant. My voice broke. That's mine. How dare you wear that? Tiffany's lips curved into a smirk as her fingers brushed the pearl. It suits me better, she said softly. The officers exchanged looks. Sir, your wife claims she can't enter the apartment, the older one said carefully. Yes, Marcus sighed, pulling a folder from under his arm. I was forced to change the locks. She's unstable. There's a restraining order for her own good. Here. He handed them a stack of documents. The young officer flipped through them, then looked at me with pitying eyes. Ma'am, these look official. Divorce petition, restraining order, all properly stamped. That's not true. I screamed. He's lying. That's my apartment. My parents left it to me. Just then, Mr. Wells appeared at the top of the stairs, immaculate in his gray suit and glasses. He nodded to the officers politely. Good evening. I represent Mrs. Sterling. Marcus turned to him, feigning irritation. And who might you be? The lawyer whose client you've unlawfully evicted, Mr. Wells replied sharply. This property was inherited by Mrs. Sterling. It's her personal asset, not subject to division in any divorce proceeding. Marcus's eyes narrowed. Was. The word hung in the air. What do you mean was? I asked. Marcus's smile widened. Because she already sold it to me. I froze. That's a lie. He held out another document. Purchase and sale agreement. Dated 2 weeks ago. Signed by Naomi and Sterling. Amount, $25,000. I snatched the paper from the officer's hand. My heart nearly stopped. My signature stared back at me, perfect, flawless, identical to the real one. Only. I had never signed it. This is a forgery, I whispered. Mr. Wells examined the document, his brow furrowing. It's very sophisticated. But yes, fake. We'll request a forensic analysis immediately. Marcus gave a short laugh. You can try. Everything's been notarized and filed. If she's having second thoughts, that's her problem. He turned to the officers again. Also, one more thing. I'd like to report stolen funds. A large sum disappeared from our home. I suspect my wife took it. My knees nearly gave out. What money? You're lying again. The younger officer raised his hands. All right, folks. We're going to need statements. Let's take this down to the station. Marcus nodded graciously, then turned to Tiffany. You should go, love. I'll handle this. Tiffany brushed imaginary dust off her sleeve, then smiled at me with venomous sweetness. Good luck, Naomi. Maybe next time, you'll keep your paperwork in order. She disappeared inside my apartment, closing the door behind her like she owned it. Marcus gave me one last look, cold, satisfied, final. Well, he said softly. Looks like you've finally learned what happens when you stand in my way. The world tilted again. My ears rang. The officers led me and Mr. Wells down the stairs, their voices blurring together into meaningless noise. By the time we reached the street, my whole body was trembling. The home that held every piece of my life, gone. The man who once promised to protect me, my enemy. The law that should have helped me, blind. And for the first time in 15 years, I realized the truth Eleanor had hinted at. Marcus wasn't trying to hurt me. He was trying to erase me. The police station smelled of old coffee and dust, that stale mix that sticks to your clothes and clings to your throat. They sat me in a hard plastic chair under fluorescent lights that buzzed like insects. I felt like I'd fallen out of my life and landed in someone else's nightmare. The younger officer who had followed us from the apartment tapped away at his computer, eyes half-lidded, as if he'd already decided what story he wanted to believe. The older one leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "So, Mrs. Sterling," he began, his tone somewhere between weary and suspicious. "You're saying your husband forged documents to take over your apartment?" "Yes," I said, voice shaking. "That apartment was mine. My parents left it to me. I never sold it. That contract is fake." He scratched something on his notepad. "And the money your husband claims you stole?" "I didn't take anything. He's lying to protect himself." Mr. Wells, sitting beside me, raised his voice slightly. "My client is the victim of document forgery, fraud, and unlawful eviction. This case is a civil matter, and the alleged theft accusation is retaliation." The younger officer snorted. "You lawyers and your words. Sounds like a domestic dispute to me." Mr. Wells's jaw tightened. Domestic disputes do not involve falsified contracts or stolen property titles. They ignored him. Their eyes had already glazed over, two men too used to messy stories about husbands and wives tearing each other apart. After hours of questioning, note-taking, and barely concealed skepticism, they finally released us pending investigation. When we stepped outside, the morning had already broken. The gray light of dawn made the world look colorless, stripped bare, exactly how I felt. Mr. Wells opened the car door for me. "I'll drive you back to Ms. Vance," he said quietly. I sank into the seat and stared at the passing buildings. Nothing looked real anymore, not the shops, not the people, not even my own reflection in the window. By the time we reached Eleanor's mansion, I was hollow. Estelle, the housekeeper, led me upstairs without a word. The place was as silent as a tomb. Even the walls seemed to absorb sound. When Eleanor finally called for me, her voice echoed from her study. "Come in, Naomi." She sat in her armchair like a queen at a trial, calm, poised, unreadable. On the table before her lay a cup of tea, untouched. "Well," she said evenly. "Did you see what he's done?" I hesitated at the doorway. "He changed the locks. Forged papers. The police didn't believe me." My voice cracked. "He said I was unstable. That I stole money. They believed him." Eleanor tilted her head, expressionless. "And you let him?" What was I supposed to do? They had documents. Official seals." She sighed, like a teacher addressing a slow student. "Documents mean nothing. They're pieces of paper. Influence, that's what matters. And right now, your husband has more of it than you." I clenched my fists. "So what now?" "I've lost everything." "Not everything," she said calmly. "You still have me." Her words should have been comforting. They weren't. "Naomi," she continued, standing up, "you made the mistake every good person makes, believing the world is fair. It isn't. Power doesn't care about truth. It cares about control. So stop crying over what's gone and start thinking about what you can take back." I stared at her. "How?" "You said yourself, he's covered every angle." She walked to her desk and picked up the new phone she'd given me. "Then we change the game. We don't fight him in court. We fight him in the court of reputation." "Reputation?" Eleanor's lips curved into a cold smile. "Yes. That's his weakness. Your husband wants status, approval, respect. That's why he built that ridiculous lake house. That's why he clings to Tiffany Chambers, the district attorney's daughter. He needs to be seen as important." Her tone sharpened. "So we'll take that from him." I felt a chill. "What do you mean?" "Tomorrow night, there's a charity gala downtown. All the city's elite will be there, politicians, business owners, donors. Marcus will be there too. Giving a speech." I frowned. How do you know that? Eleanor chuckled softly. I know everything worth knowing. She stepped closer. You will go there. You will confront him. Publicly. My stomach dropped. Confront him? In front of everyone? Yes, she said simply. You will ask him one question. One that he cannot answer. One that will make him choke on his lies. What question? You'll find out when it's time. Her cryptic smile made my skin prickle. But first, she continued, you'll need to look the part. Estelle will prepare you, dress, hair, makeup. You must walk into that gala looking like the woman he threw away but couldn't destroy. Strength unsettles men like Marcus. So show them strength. I hesitated, every instinct screaming that this was madness. But then I saw his face again in my mind, the smug look he'd worn as the police took his side, the calm smile when Tiffany dangled my mother's pendant like a trophy. Something hardened inside me. Fine, I said quietly. I'll go. Eleanor's expression softened for just a heartbeat, pride flickering beneath the ice. Good. Maybe you're finally learning. That night, Estelle brought a gown into my room, elegant but understated, deep wine red with subtle shimmer. She did my hair, shaped my face with soft, confident hands, and when I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. The woman staring back wasn't broken anymore. She was someone who'd been pushed too far to ever go back. The next evening, as Darius opened the door of the black sedan outside the gala hall, Eleanor's final words echoed in my mind. Do not go there as a victim. Go there as his consequence. The night of the gala was painted in gold and glass. The kind of night where everyone wore their best lies along with their finest clothes. As Darius's car glided to a stop in front of the Grand Hotel, I saw flashes of camera lights, the shimmer of champagne flutes, and the easy smiles of people who had never been humiliated in their lives. I took a breath that scraped like broken glass in my throat. Are you sure you want to do this? Darius asked, his voice low and even. I turned my head, met his eyes in the rearview mirror. I don't have a choice. He nodded once, got out, and opened my door. The cold air hit me like a warning. But I stepped out anyway. Heads turned. I felt the weight of their stares, not admiration, not yet, curiosity, maybe recognition. The woman Marcus Sterling had supposedly thrown away had just walked back into their world, wearing confidence like armor. Inside, the ballroom gleamed with chandeliers and polished marble. Laughter and violins filled the air. Every step I took felt like walking a tightrope over fire. Marcus was easy to find. He stood on the stage, perfectly pressed suit, a glass of wine in hand, speaking into a microphone as though he owned the world. Tiffany stood a few feet away, radiant and smug in a silver gown, the gold chain at her throat catching every beam of light. My mother's pendant. Eleanor's voice echoed in my mind, one question. Make him choke on it. When Marcus's speech ended, the crowd erupted in applause. He smiled, that politician's smile I'd once thought charming, and began stepping down from the stage. I waited until he was halfway through the crowd before moving. Marcus. My voice was steady but loud enough to cut through the music. The crowd turned. He froze mid-step, eyes snapping toward me. For the first time I saw it, that flicker of fear behind the polished mask. What are you doing here? He hissed, his smile cracking. I walked closer, heels clicking on the marble. Just one question. He tried to block me with a forced laugh. Naomi, this isn't the place. I didn't stop. My voice carried over the murmurs. Tell me, Marcus, where did you get the right to sell my mother's apartment? The room fell into silence. Utter, heavy silence. Dozens of eyes shifted between us. A few phones lifted discreetly to record. His jaw tightened. Naomi, you're making a scene. Yes, I said. And it's about time someone did. He stepped closer, his voice dropping. You need help. I need an answer. The silence stretched until it snapped. Tiffany swept forward suddenly, grabbing his arm, her voice high and cutting through the air. Don't pay attention to her. She's drunk. She turned toward the crowd, voice rising in mock pity. She doesn't even remember what she says anymore, she's sick. I opened my mouth, but she was faster. She pulled out her phone, tapped the screen, and suddenly the ballroom filled with sound, my voice, slurred and laughing, echoing through the speakers. On the screen of her phone, a video played, me, half drunk at my nephew's birthday dinner, swaying and singing off-key. Laughter. Wine glasses. My cheeks flushed red from too much wine and too little sleep. See? Tiffany said sweetly. She doesn't even remember. This is the woman accusing my fiancé of fraud. A ripple of uneasy laughter moved through the crowd. Someone whispered, that's her? Another said, poor thing. I felt the blood rush to my face. The shame was physical, sharp, burning. Marcus didn't look at me. He didn't have to. His silence said everything. Tiffany smiled for the cameras, then looked at me with eyes full of triumph. You've embarrassed yourself enough, Naomi. Go home. Home. The word twisted like a knife. The crowd began to turn away. Conversations restarted in low murmurs. I stood frozen, surrounded by pity and whispers, while Marcus placed a gentle hand on Tiffany's back, guiding her away like she was fragile and precious. That small gesture broke something inside me. I walked out of that hall with my head held high, not because I felt strong, but because I refused to give them my tears. Outside, the cold air hit harder. I hugged myself, staring at the glittering city lights through the blur of humiliation. A black sedan pulled up without a sound. Darius stepped out and opened the back door. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to. I slid inside, silent. The car moved, and the city blurred past. I could still hear the echo of laughter from the ballroom, the mockery, the pity, the whispers that would spread by morning. Eleanor's plan had failed. No, I had failed it. By the time we reached her mansion, my strength had turned to dust. She was waiting for me in her study when I walked in, eyes sharp, jaw tight. She didn't even let me speak. You walked into a lion's den with no teeth, she said coldly. You let him turn the crowd against you. I swallowed hard. She had a video. How was I supposed to predict it? She snapped. Know your enemy. You didn't lose tonight because she was clever, Naomi. You lost because you were naive. I bit my lip, blinking back tears. Then what now? They've destroyed me. Everyone saw it. Eleanor turned away, staring out the tall window into the night. Let them laugh. Let them think you're finished. The best revenge, she said softly, is patience. When she turned back, her eyes glittered like cold steel. Now we change tactics. No more public scenes. No more appeals to sympathy. From now on, we fight the way they do, quietly, ruthlessly, in the dark. Her words lingered like smoke in the air. I left her office that night understanding something new. Eleanor didn't just want justice. She wanted war. And she expected me to fight it her way. But I wasn't sure which was worse anymore, Marcus's cruelty, or Eleanor's hunger for control. The morning after the gala came with no mercy. I woke up in Eleanor's guest room with my makeup still smudged, my eyes sore, my body heavy from exhaustion. For a moment, I didn't remember where I was, then it all came crashing back, the ballroom, the laughter, Tiffany's voice playing that humiliating video, the way Marcus pretended not to see me. The humiliation didn't fade overnight, it fermented. By noon, the world had already started its quiet punishment. My phone buzzed, the new one Eleanor had given me, but the name on the screen made my stomach drop. Mr. Thompson, my boss at the regional manufacturing hub. I answered quickly. Mr. Thompson? Thank God you called. I've been. Naomi. His voice was clipped, professional, distant. I'll get straight to the point. Due to last night's situation, and the publicity it's already attracting, management has decided to suspend you indefinitely. Without pay. What? Mr. Thompson, that video was taken out of context. It's not. I'm not interested in the context, he interrupted coldly. Our company doesn't need negative attention. You'll receive an official notice by courier today. I hope you understand. Please, I whispered. You know me. I've worked there for. The line went dead. I stared at the phone in disbelief. Just like that, years of loyalty were erased. A few minutes later, I tried calling my closest friend from work, Liza, but she didn't answer. I called again. Still nothing. Then, finally, a text appeared. Naomi, I'm sorry. Please don't contact me again. I have a family and kids. I can't get involved. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. By evening, I wasn't just unemployed. I was radioactive. Every message, every call, ignored. My world had shrunk to Eleanor's mansion and the walls that now felt more like a cage than a refuge. When she finally summoned me, she didn't even look surprised. I found her in the same armchair as always, posture perfect, eyes razor sharp. You've been fired, she said simply. It wasn't a question. I nodded weakly. Everyone believes them. Marcus and Tiffany. The video, the lies, it's all over social media now. Eleanor exhaled slowly. Of course it is. That's how reputations are destroyed, not in courtrooms, but in whispers. I don't know what to do anymore, I said, my voice breaking. They've taken everything from me. Her gaze hardened. No, Naomi. You gave it to them. I blinked, shocked. What? You walked into that gala like a scared little girl hoping for justice, she snapped. You didn't go to win. You went to be seen. To beg for sympathy. That's why you lost. Anger flared inside me. So what, this is my fault now. Eleanor rose slowly from her chair, her presence filling the room. Fault is irrelevant. Results are all that matter. You still have one thing they can't take, the truth. But truth, my dear, means nothing unless it's armed. I dropped into the nearest chair, my body trembling. How? How am I supposed to fight people like them? He has the police, the lawyers, the money. And you have me, she interrupted, voice sharp as a blade. Stop crying. Tears are a luxury. You want your life back? Then fight for it. I looked up at her, feeling a strange mix of fear and awe. Fight how? Eleanor studied me for a long moment, then spoke softly, almost tenderly. The law won't help you now. Marcus has poisoned it against you. So we'll do something the law can't stop. We'll make him destroy himself. Her words hung in the air like a spell. How? I whispered again. Eleanor paced slowly to her desk, picked up a folder, and tapped it lightly. Everyone has a weakness. Marcus's is money, and the people he owes it to. He's desperate. That desperation will make him sloppy. And when he slips, she smiled faintly. We'll be there to pull the thread. I wanted to believe her, but all I felt was exhaustion, the kind that seeps into your bones. I don't know if I have anything left, I admitted. Eleanor turned, her tone softening for the first time. Then borrow my strength until you do. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Outside, the rain began to fall, slow, steady, relentless. It beat against the tall windows, washing the world clean while leaving me just as stained. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, her words echoing over and over in my mind. We'll make him destroy himself. It sounded impossible. But then again, so had surviving the roadside, the humiliation, the betrayal. Maybe impossible was all I had left. When I finally closed my eyes, I wasn't crying anymore. I wasn't even afraid. I just felt something cold, focused, and new taking root inside me, the beginning of a purpose. By the time Eleanor called me to her study again, 2 days had passed. I hadn't left my room except to eat. I felt hollowed out, like the world had scraped me clean. When I entered, she didn't waste a second. "We've been watching your husband's movements," she said, her voice calm, businesslike. "He's been meeting quietly with developers and bank officials. Whatever he's planning is bigger than his pride or your apartment." I frowned. "Planning what?" "Something illegal," she said simply. "And he's close to pulling it off. But he made one mistake, he left traces. And those traces lead back to you." Her words chilled me. "What kind of traces?" Eleanor's expression darkened. "Documents. Digital authorizations. We found records with your name and digital signature attached to them. If anyone were to investigate, it would look like you signed off on several high-value city construction permits tied to your husband's new lake project." I shook my head, horrified. "That's impossible. I never touched those files." "He did," she said quietly. "He's using your credentials from the plant. And if we don't find something solid to prove your innocence, you'll be the one in prison while he disappears with his mistress." I felt dizzy. "So what do I do?" Eleanor leaned forward, her eyes glinting with that cold, deliberate purpose I was beginning to recognize. "You find evidence before he burns it." Where would he keep something that important? I thought hard. For a moment, everything blurred together, our old life, our arguments, the places he hated. And then I saw it, the small cabin near Willow Creek, the one my father built decades ago. Marcus despised it, called it a shack for sentimental fools. We hadn't visited it in years. "The cabin," I whispered. "My father's old place. That's where the original ownership papers for the apartment were always kept. If he wanted to hide something, he'd go there." Eleanor's lips curved into the faintest hint of a smile. "Then that's where you'll go." "Tonight," I said automatically, feeling a surge of determination. "Yes," she confirmed. "Darius will drive you as far as the edge of the settlement. After that, you're on your own. No calls, no noise, no mistakes. You'll have 2 hours. If you're not back by then, Darius leaves." Her words were sharp, but her tone carried something else, something almost like pride. I nodded. "I'll bring back whatever I find." "Good girl," she said softly. The night was dark and heavy with mist. Darius drove in silence, his eyes fixed on the winding road ahead. When he finally stopped, we were surrounded by tall trees and the distant hum of insects. "This is as far as I go," he said, glancing at me in the mirror. 2 hours. I nodded and got out, clutching the small flashlight Eleanor had given me. The air was damp, smelling of pine and wet soil. The path to the cabin was overgrown, branches tugging at my clothes as I walked. My heart thudded in my ears, but I kept going. I had to. When the cabin finally came into view, I almost didn't recognize it. The once yellow paint had peeled away, the fence leaned crookedly, and the windows were clouded with dust. But it was still standing, stubborn, like the memories it held. The front door was locked, so I circled around to the back. One of the small garden windows gave way after a few pushes. I squeezed through and landed inside, the air thick with age and dust. I turned on the flashlight. The beam revealed the old sofa, my father's bookshelf, and the wooden desk in the corner, the one where he kept all his important papers. My hand shook as I opened the bottom drawer. Under a stack of brittle newspapers, I saw it, a faded blue folder. I pulled it out, breath catching in my throat. Inside were the original apartment papers, the inheritance certificates, the official seals, the signatures. Real, untouched, undeniable proof that Marcus had forged the sale. For the first time in weeks, hope surged through me. I had proof. But then, something caught my eye. The floorboard beneath the desk looked uneven, just slightly raised. I crouched down, tapped it, hollow. My pulse quickened. Using the edge of a pen, I pried it open. Beneath was a small fireproof safe, about the size of a shoebox. My heart raced. The combination lock looked old. My fingers trembled as I tried the numbers that meant something. My birth year, nothing. My father's, no. My parents' wedding year, click. The safe opened. Inside were 2 neat stacks of papers and 2 passports. I pulled them out. The first passport bore Marcus's face. The second, Tiffany's. My stomach twisted. Both were recently issued. Fake names, same destination. They were planning to run. I went through the papers. They were city permits, property contracts, and building authorizations, all stamped with official seals from the city's architectural board. Then my blood ran cold. On the final page was my own digital signature, the same one I used at work. No. No, no, no. It was a perfect forgery. A trap. The documents framed me as the one who'd approved millions in fraudulent construction payments. Marcus wasn't just abandoning me, he was setting me up to take the fall for his entire scheme. I staggered back, clutching the papers. My vision blurred, the room spinning around me. This wasn't just betrayal. It was execution on paper. He'd thought of everything, the lies, the humiliation, the false signatures. I was his scapegoat, the sacrifice he'd offered to save himself. But now, I had his proof. The passports. The fake permits. The evidence that could destroy him. I shoved everything into the blue folder, clutching it to my chest. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. The silence around me suddenly felt wrong, too heavy, too still. I turned off the flashlight and listened. Footsteps. Faint, but real. Outside. I froze. Someone was out there. The back of my neck prickled as I moved quietly toward the window. Through the slits in the curtains, I saw the faint glow of headlights in the distance. Panic clawed at my throat. I stuffed the documents into my bag and climbed back out the window, scraping my arm on the frame. I didn't stop running until I reached the edge of the settlement, where Darius's car idled exactly where he'd said it would. He didn't ask questions. He just looked at me once in the mirror and started the engine. The drive back was a blur, headlights, dark trees, the pounding of my heart. When we reached Eleanor's estate, she was waiting at the door, as if she'd known the exact second I'd arrive. "Well?" she asked. I handed her the blue folder. "You were right," I whispered. "He's framing me for something huge. Fraud, permits, stolen money, it's all there." Eleanor opened the folder, skimmed the first few pages, and smiled faintly. "Good work, Naomi." Her tone was calm, but her eyes gleamed with something sharper than relief, satisfaction. As I stood there trembling, it struck me, Eleanor hadn't just expected this outcome. She'd wanted it. And for the first time I began to wonder whether saving me was really her goal, or just part of a much larger game I didn't yet understand. The next morning, sunlight poured through the tall windows of Eleanor's mansion like nothing had happened. The world outside looked calm, indifferent, the kind of deceptive peace that always comes before another storm. Eleanor sat at the long breakfast table, reading a newspaper, while Darius poured her tea. When I walked in, she didn't look up immediately. "Sit, Naomi," she said, voice cool but steady. "You look like you haven't slept." "I didn't," I admitted, sliding into the chair opposite her. My hands were still trembling faintly. I kept seeing his face. Marcus. All those documents, it was like he'd planned this for years. Eleanor folded her paper neatly, eyes meeting mine. "Men like him always do. You've been fighting in a war you didn't know existed." She took a sip of her tea, calm as glass. "But now, you have leverage. The evidence you brought back, it's a noose around his neck." "I don't understand why he'd risk so much," I said, my voice hoarse. "The fraud, the permits, the fake passports, what's the end game?" Eleanor's expression didn't change. "Money. It's always money. The Lake Project is a laundering scheme, public funds funneled through fake contractors. When the investigation hits, his name will vanish, and yours will take the blame." Her words hung in the air like cold smoke. I felt a lump rise in my throat. Then we can stop it, right? If we show these to the police. Eleanor cut me off with a sharp laugh. The police? The same ones who threw you out of your own apartment? She shook her head. No, Naomi. The law works for men like Marcus. You can't beat them by playing fair. I didn't argue. Not because I agreed, but because I didn't have the strength to. Just then, Estelle entered the room quietly. Madam, there's a visitor at the gate. She says she's family. Eleanor's eyebrows lifted slightly. Family? Estelle turned to me. She said her name is Tia. My heart skipped. Tia? My sister? Eleanor's face softened a fraction, then hardened again. Interesting timing, she murmured. Let her in. A few minutes later, Tia walked in, all bright colors and perfect hair, smelling like perfume and fresh gossip. She hadn't changed a bit. Naomi, she exclaimed, running over and hugging me tightly. Oh my God, I've been worried sick. You disappeared. No one could reach you. I pulled back, stunned. You saw the video? Her eyes darted away. Everyone saw it. But I don't believe half of what people say. Marcus told me you were unstable, but I knew that couldn't be true. I just wanted to see you myself. Her voice cracked slightly, maybe genuine emotion, maybe performance. I couldn't tell anymore. Eleanor watched her with quiet calculation, her cane resting across her lap. Sisterly concern is a rare commodity these days, she said dryly. Please, sit. Tia smiled politely. Thank you. You must be Mrs. Vance. Naomi's mentioned you. Eleanor didn't respond. She just gestured for Estelle to bring another cup of tea. Tia reached for my hand. Naomi, listen. I know things are bad. But Marcus isn't what people say. He's hurt too. He told me he just wants peace. I stiffened. He told you what? That he's willing to fix things, quietly, she said quickly. He said if you give him back the papers, he'll drop everything. The lawyers, the accusations, all of it. You'll get a settlement, and you can finally move on. My stomach twisted. He sent you? Tia hesitated just a little too long. No. Of course not. I'm just trying to help. Eleanor leaned forward, her voice cutting through the air. How generous of him. Tell me, Tia, did your brother-in-law also tell you what's inside those papers? Tia looked startled. I don't know what you mean. Eleanor smiled thinly. Of course you don't. Because he doesn't trust anyone, not even the pawns he sends. Pawns? Tia repeated, her voice trembling slightly. I'm not. Eleanor's tone hardened. Naomi, she's lying. Tia's head snapped toward me. Naomi, don't listen to her. She's using you. Can't you see that? This woman doesn't care about you. She's controlling you. I looked between them, my heart pounding. The air in the room grew heavy, Tia's desperation clashing with Eleanor's icy calm. Naomi, Eleanor said softly, your sister is working for your husband. She came to retrieve those documents, not to save you. Tia's eyes filled with tears. That's not true. I just want to fix things before you get hurt. Marcus said. She stopped mid-sentence, realizing she'd said too much. Eleanor stood slowly, cane tapping against the floor. Get out. Tia's lips trembled. Naomi, please. I swear, if you just give me the folder, he'll stop. He'll leave you alone. You can start over. Her words hit me in the softest part of my heart, the part that still longed for peace, for an end to this madness. For a second, I hesitated. Then I said quietly, Tia. I trusted you before. I won't make that mistake again. She blinked, her face shifting, sorrow dissolving into cold, naked anger. Fine, she hissed. But don't say I didn't try to save you. She turned on her heel and stormed out, the sound of her heels echoing through the marble hall. When the door slammed behind her, silence filled the room again. Eleanor looked at me for a long time before speaking. You did well not to give her anything. I sank back in my chair, exhausted. She would have taken it, wouldn't she? Eleanor's lips curved into a thin smile. Of course she would. Marcus doesn't send amateurs. I frowned. You think she was working for him? Oh, I don't think, Eleanor said softly. I know. And that means something very important, Naomi. What? He's getting desperate. When a man like Marcus starts sending family to do his dirty work, it means he's running out of pawns. She poured herself another cup of tea, her expression calm, almost pleased. Now, she said, it's time to tighten the net. As she spoke, I looked toward the window, where Tia's car was disappearing down the long driveway. I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the last time I'd see her, or the last time she'd betray me. Because the look on her face as she left wasn't one of defeat. It was a promise. The call came just before sunset. Eleanor and I were sitting in her study, surrounded by the low hum of quiet wealth, polished wood, faint jazz on the old record player, the kind of peace that doesn't belong to people like me anymore. I was beginning to think maybe, just maybe, things were finally under control. Then my new phone rang. I looked down. Unknown number. Before I could answer, Eleanor's voice sliced through the air. Don't. It could be about Marcus, I said. Her eyes narrowed. No one good ever calls from an unknown number. Let it ring. But I didn't. Against my better judgment, I answered. Mrs. Sterling? The voice was male, flat, official. Yes? This is Detective Hughes, City Financial Crimes Unit. We need you to come in for questioning regarding an ongoing fraud investigation. It concerns the Willow Creek project and the misuse of city permits signed under your name. My stomach dropped. What? No, those documents were forged. I understand, ma'am, he said, his tone unreadable. Please come in voluntarily. If you don't, we'll have to issue a warrant. My hand trembled. When? Now. The line went dead. Eleanor's calm expression didn't falter, but I saw her jaw tighten. They moved faster than I expected. I turned to her, panicking. What do I do? I didn't do anything wrong. She stood, her movements slow, deliberate. Darius will drive you. Go. Cooperate. You'll be processed and released. You've done nothing illegal. But remember, say nothing about me. Not a word. Understand? I nodded shakily. Yes. She walked over, placed a cold, steady hand on my shoulder. Don't let them see fear, Naomi. Fear makes them think you're guilty. The police station looked different this time. Not indifferent, hungry. 2 officers were waiting when Darius pulled up. They didn't even let me step out properly before one said, Naomi and Sterling? You're under arrest for fraud, forgery, and embezzlement. What? No. I came voluntarily. The metallic click of handcuffs silenced me. People were watching, pedestrians, a woman with a stroller, a man on a bicycle who actually slowed down to record. I felt their eyes pierce through me like knives. At that moment, I understood humiliation in its truest form. They led me inside, processed me like I was just another criminal, fingerprints, mugshot, the cold flash of the camera catching my tear-streaked face. Then the interrogation began. Detective Hughes sat across from me, gray suit, thin lips, eyes that gave nothing away. His partner, a younger officer, leaned against the wall, arms folded. Mrs. Sterling, Hughes began, flipping open a folder thick with papers. According to city financial records, several authorizations for multimillion naira construction contracts were signed under your credentials. We traced them back to your work computer. The dates match your login. That's impossible, I said, my throat dry. I didn't sign anything. My husband, he's the one who forged it. Hughes slid a printed sheet across the table. My digital signature glowed faintly at the bottom. Your husband claims you confessed to forging his name for the funds, he said quietly. What? My voice broke. He's lying. He's framing me. He stole my apartment, forged documents. Hughes raised a hand. Mrs. Sterling, we found these papers at your sister's house earlier today. My blood turned to ice. My sister? He nodded, turning another photo toward me. Tia's face, nervous but defiant, stared back from the printout. Beneath it, the blue folder, my blue folder, lying open on her dining table. I didn't give her that. I cried. She must have stolen it. Hughes's voice was calm, detached. Your sister stated that you visited her earlier this morning and handed over the documents willingly. She said you asked her to keep them safe in case things went wrong. My mind reeled. No. No, that's not true. The younger officer snorted. So she lied. Everyone lies for a reason. What's yours? I slammed my palms on the table. Because I'm the one being set up. My husband's behind everything. He's planning to run away with that woman, Tiffany Chambers. Check their passports. They're fake. Hughes leaned back, studying me. Those passports you're referring to, he said slowly, were found in your bag, Mrs. Sterling. Not his. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. He slid a small plastic evidence bag across the table. Inside were the 2 passports I'd found in the cabin. The sight of them hit me like a physical blow. No. I'd handed the entire case against me to the police, neatly, completely, involuntarily. Tia. My own sister had delivered me like a package straight into Marcus's hands. I buried my face in my hands, tears spilling freely now. Please. You have to believe me. I didn't do any of this. Hughes didn't move. Mrs. Sterling, you'll be held overnight pending further investigation. The younger officer stepped forward, snapping on latex gloves. Let's go. They escorted me through the hallway, past rooms of murmuring officers. I caught glimpses of their faces, some curious, some amused, some indifferent. When the cell door clanged shut behind me, I finally broke. The walls were gray, the floor cold, and the single overhead bulb flickered with every hum of the generator. I curled up in the corner, knees against my chest, the weight of everything pressing down until I could barely breathe. How had it come to this? I tried to hold on to Eleanor's voice in my mind, don't let them see fear. But alone in that cell, fear was all I had. By morning, I was too numb to stand. The guard opened the door, motioning for me to follow. You've made bail, he said. I stumbled out, expecting to see Eleanor. Instead, it was Mr. Wells, holding a manila folder and a tired expression. He guided me outside wordlessly. The sunlight felt cruel, too bright after the night I'd just endured. In the car, I finally found my voice. Where's Eleanor? He didn't look at me. Out of the city. What? Why? She wouldn't just leave. She anticipated your arrest, he said evenly. She said you needed to see how deep this went. My head snapped toward him. What are you talking about? He sighed. Eleanor doesn't play defense, Naomi. She plays offense. And this was just her opening move. I stared at him, heart pounding. What does that mean? He met my eyes in the mirror. It means you're not done falling yet. The car ride from the police station felt endless. I sat in the back seat, silent, my wrists still red where the cuffs had bitten into them. Every sound, the hum of the tires, the faint whistle of wind through the crack in the window, felt amplified. Mr. Wells didn't say a word. Neither did I. When he finally turned off the highway, I realized we weren't going back to Eleanor's mansion. The car pulled up in front of a quiet townhouse on the outskirts of the city. It was elegant but far smaller than Eleanor's estate. Where are we? I asked, my voice rough from crying. A safe property, he said. One of Mrs. Vance's rentals. You'll stay here until things settle down. Settle down? I echoed bitterly. My husband's framed me, my sisters betrayed me, I just spent a night in a cell, and you think this is going to settle down? He turned in his seat, his calm composure never slipping. Panic won't help you, Mrs. Sterling. Survival will. There's a difference. I wanted to scream, but I didn't have the strength. I followed him inside, my body moving like it belonged to someone else. The house smelled faintly of cedar and polish. Minimalist. Quiet. Safe, at least on the surface. Mr. Wells set a folder on the dining table. Inside are the details of your bail agreement. You're under restricted movement until the court hearing. Eleanor has already covered your bond. I froze. She paid for me? He nodded. She believes you still have a role to play. Role? I repeated, my stomach twisting. What am I, her project? Her pawn? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he poured himself a glass of water, took a measured sip, and said, Mrs. Vance rarely invests in people without purpose. I sank into a chair. So, what now? Do I hide forever? No, he said. You prepare. Marcus's case against you is strong, on paper. But we found discrepancies in his transactions. Small, buried ones. Eleanor believes they lead somewhere bigger. Somewhere dangerous. I rubbed my temples. Eleanor believes. Eleanor decides. Do I get to believe anything for myself anymore? That was the first time his expression flickered, just slightly. You should start, he said softly. You won't survive this story if you don't. That night, I tried to sleep, but my mind refused to rest. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw flashes of the interrogation room, Tia's smug face, Marcus's signature where mine should have been. When I finally drifted off, it wasn't peace that found me, it was a dream. I was back at the cabin. The same safe, the same papers. Only this time, when I lifted the blue folder, there was another set of hands reaching for it. Cold, steady hands, Eleanor's. She looked up at me and smiled. You brought me what I needed, she whispered. I woke up gasping, drenched in sweat. For the first time, the thought hit me like lightning, what if Eleanor wanted the folder for herself all along? It sounded insane, until I remembered the way she'd smiled when I gave it to her. That flash of satisfaction, not relief. The woman who had rescued me, housed me, taught me how to fight back, what if she'd been playing her own game the entire time? My heart pounded. I picked up the phone and dialed her number. No answer. I tried again. Still nothing. It rang a third time before going straight to voicemail. Her voice was calm, detached. If you're calling, it means something has gone wrong. Don't panic. It means things are finally moving as they should. The message ended there. Moving as they should. I sat there, staring at the phone, realization crashing down like ice water. She'd known I'd be arrested. She'd told Mr. Wells not to interfere. She'd planned every piece of this. I wasn't her student. I was her bait. The next morning, I found a brown envelope slipped under the door. My name, typed, not handwritten, was on the front. Inside were two things. A printed photo of Marcus shaking hands with a man I didn't recognize, and a note written in neat, looping cursive. Naomi. You were never the target. He was. Keep your nerve. The real game starts now. Evie. My breath caught. The man in the photo wasn't just anyone. I recognized him from Marcus's social events, one of the regional directors of the city's construction authority. A man rumored to have deep connections with the elite. Below the photo, a date and time were scribbled in red ink, tomorrow. 8 p.m., the Glass District Hotel. I stared at it for a long time, my hands trembling. Marcus had always said the hotel was where deals that never make the news were made. And now, Eleanor wanted me to go there. To do what? Spy? Confront him again? Hand him over? I didn't know anymore. All I knew was this: the woman who'd saved me was using me, and the man who'd destroyed me was still out there smiling for cameras. Somewhere between them, I'd stopped being a wife or a victim. I'd become a weapon. I stood in front of the mirror that night, staring at my reflection, the bruised skin around my wrists, the exhaustion in my eyes, the small, hard ember of rage glowing behind them. I'm not your pawn anymore, I whispered to the empty room. Not his. Not hers. The next evening, I'd go to the Glass District Hotel. Not for Eleanor. Not for revenge. For the truth. Whatever it cost. The Glass District was exactly how Marcus used to describe it: clean, expensive, and dangerous in a quiet way. Everything gleamed, glass towers reflecting neon light, the sound of laughter spilling from rooftop bars, the illusion that the city was a place where success lived forever. But under that shimmer, there was rot. I could feel it. I arrived at 7:55 p.m., wearing a plain black coat that Darius had left in the townhouse closet. My heart thudded hard enough to drown out the city noise as I stepped into the hotel lobby. The place was elegant in a cold, modern way: marble floors, golden elevators, and a chandelier that looked like dripping icicles. Couples drank cocktails by the bar. Businessmen murmured in corners. Nobody noticed me, and that was good. At least, I thought they didn't. From a table near the far wall, a man's eyes followed me. His suit was charcoal gray, his hair slicked back, his face too familiar. Marcus's lawyer. The same man who'd stood beside him at the gala. He recognized me instantly. And smiled. I froze. The envelope. The photo. Eleanor's note: the real game starts now. Was this it? I forced my feet to move toward the elevators, pretending not to see him. Behind me, I heard his chair scrape back. I pressed the button for the 6th floor and stepped inside just as he called out, "Naomi." Wait. The doors slid shut before he could reach me. My hand shook. What was I walking into? The 6th floor was quiet, too quiet. The hallway stretched long and empty, carpet muffling my footsteps. Room numbers glinted under dim gold lights. The air smelled faintly of perfume and static. Room 614. That was the number written in red ink under the hotel name on the photo. When I reached it, the door was slightly ajar. "Eleanor?" I whispered. Silence. I pushed it open. The suite was dark, except for a single lamp casting a yellow circle across the floor. The curtains were half drawn, and the city lights outside painted shifting patterns across the walls. And on the glass coffee table sat the blue folder. The same one from the cabin. My pulse spiked. I stepped closer. Every instinct screamed trap, but curiosity drowned caution. The moment I touched the folder, the lights flickered, and then a voice came from behind me. "I was wondering how long it would take you." I turned sharply. Marcus stood near the window, one hand in his pocket, the other holding a half-empty glass of whiskey. He looked completely at ease, like this was just another business meeting. "Marcus," I breathed. He smiled faintly. "Still dramatic, I see." I stepped back, clutching the folder. "How did you know I'd be here?" "Oh, Naomi," he said, setting his glass down. "You think I didn't know about Eleanor? About her little games?" My stomach twisted. "You're lying." "Am I?" He took a step closer. "She's been playing both sides since day one. You were just the perfect distraction. The heartbroken wife everyone would underestimate." "That's not true," I said, though my voice wavered. He tilted his head, amused. "Then why do you think she paid your bail so quickly? Why do you think she told you exactly where to find the documents?" "Because she wanted me to see you take them." I shook my head, trying to make sense of it. "No, she's been helping me." He laughed softly. "Helping you?" Eleanor Vance doesn't help anyone. She's an investor, Naomi. She owns half the companies that laundered the money through the Willow Creek project. I was her frontman. The room spun. That's not possible. It's not only possible, he said, his tone flattening, it's the reason you're here. She sent you to collect the evidence that ties me to her. The folder felt suddenly heavy in my hands. Why are you telling me this? I whispered. Because she's finished with me, he said, his smile fading. And when Eleanor Vance is finished with someone, they disappear. You don't want to be next. Before I could respond, there was a sharp knock on the door. Marcus's eyes flicked toward it. Right on time, he muttered. The door opened, and Eleanor walked in. Calm. Composed. Dressed in a navy coat that seemed to absorb the light. Her gaze moved from me to Marcus, and then to the folder in my hands. Thank you for bringing it back, she said softly. Something inside me broke. You used me, I whispered. You knew they'd arrest me. She didn't deny it. You needed to see how far he'd go. Now you understand. Understand what? I demanded. That I'm just another piece on your board? Eleanor's expression didn't change. Pieces are only dangerous when they forget who's moving them. Marcus gave a bitter laugh. There it is. The real Eleanor Vance. The woman who hides behind charity galas and blind glasses. Eleanor turned her eyes on him, a slow, deliberate movement that made the room feel smaller. You should be grateful I let you live this long. I made you rich, he spat. And I made you relevant, she replied. A temporary arrangement, Marcus. Nothing more. The air between them felt like static about to catch fire. I stepped back, clutching the folder. You're both monsters. Eleanor glanced at me briefly. Don't be dramatic. Monsters are predictable. We're just human. Marcus moved suddenly, too fast, reaching for the folder in my hands. But Eleanor was faster. Her cane struck his wrist with a sharp crack. The folder fell, spilling papers across the carpet. You never learned restraint, she said coldly. Marcus's face twisted with rage. You'll regret crossing me. Eleanor tilted her head. No, Marcus. You'll regret underestimating me. He lunged again, this time for her throat. I screamed. The sound was drowned by another, the echoing click of a safety switch. Darius stood in the doorway, gun raised, eyes calm. Step back, sir. Marcus froze, breathing hard. Eleanor didn't even flinch. Take him, she said. Darius moved forward, grabbed Marcus's arm, and twisted it behind his back with mechanical precision. Where are you taking him? I demanded. Eleanor turned to me, her tone as serene as ever. Somewhere he can't hurt anyone anymore. You can't just. I can, she interrupted. And I will. Marcus was dragged toward the door, shouting my name. Naomi. Don't trust her. You'll end up just like me. The sound echoed down the hallway until it disappeared. When the silence settled, I looked at Eleanor. You set me up to get to him. Yes. And now that you have him? She walked to the window, looking out at the glittering skyline. Now, justice can begin. Justice? I laughed bitterly. You don't care about justice. You wanted control. Eleanor turned, eyes like shards of glass. Control is justice, Naomi. Without it, people like him rule forever. She walked past me, pausing just long enough to whisper, you survived because you learned to stop begging for fairness. Don't forget that. Then she left. I stood there in the quiet suite, surrounded by the scattered remains of my own life, realizing that I'd been a weapon in someone else's war from the very beginning. The only question now was whose war I'd start next. When Eleanor and Darius left with Marcus, the silence they left behind was unbearable. I sank to the floor, surrounded by scattered papers, permits, receipts, signatures, proof of crimes that tied both of them together. The woman who saved me had used me. The man who married me had destroyed me. And I was done letting anyone else write the ending. I gathered every single document, every photograph, every contract, and stuffed them back into the blue folder. Then I took one last look at the hotel suite before walking out, my mind sharper than it had been in weeks. This time, I wasn't running. By dawn, I was back at Eleanor's townhouse, pacing. The air felt heavier, as though the walls themselves were listening. I had two choices, disappear or fight. And disappearing wasn't an option anymore. I called Mr. Wells. He answered on the second ring, his tone cautious. "Naomi, where are you?" "At your office in 10 minutes, I said. "And I'm not coming to hide. I'm coming to negotiate." There was a long pause. Then, quietly, understood. When I walked into his office, he was already waiting with 2 cups of coffee. The blinds were drawn, and the smell of old paper and tension filled the air. He studied me for a moment before speaking. "You look different." "Because I finally see the board," I said flatly, placing the blue folder on his desk. "You've been helping her, haven't you?" "Eleanor Vance." "You're not just her lawyer. You're her cleaner." His jaw tightened. "That's not entirely accurate." "Then make it accurate," I said. "Tell me the truth." He sighed, leaning back. "Eleanor built her empire by protecting men like Marcus, until they got greedy. Then she cleans house. You were supposed to be the bait, yes, but she didn't plan your arrest. That was Tia's mistake. She only wanted Marcus exposed." I laughed bitterly. "You mean eliminated?" He didn't deny it. I pushed the folder toward him. "Everything's in here, the evidence that ties both of them to the fraud. The question is, who gets it first, the authorities, or the press?" His eyes flicked to the folder, then back to me. "You'd burn her empire down?" "I'd burn both their empires," I said. "He took my home. She took my dignity. Neither deserves power." Mr. Wells was silent for a long time, then said quietly, "If you do this, Eleanor won't forgive you." I met his gaze. "I'm not asking for her forgiveness. I'm taking back my life." He hesitated, then reached into his drawer and pulled out a USB drive. "There's something you should know. I made a copy of everything before handing Eleanor the original set. Insurance. If you really want to end this, we'll need to go public carefully. Choose the right ally." "Who?" He smiled faintly. "You remember the journalist, Leo Price?" The name hit me like a spark in dry air. The same reporter who'd investigated the Willow Creek discrepancies weeks ago. He'd contacted me once, back when I still believed Marcus's lies. "I can reach him," I said. "Do it," Mr. Wells replied. "But don't mention Eleanor. Let him think this is about Marcus alone. The moment her name enters print, she'll erase every trace of you." "Erase me?" "Legally," he said simply. "Financially. Maybe worse." I swallowed hard, then nodded. "Then I'll make sure she never sees it coming." That night, I met Leo in a dim cafe near the waterfront. He looked exactly as I remembered, tired eyes, restless energy, a mind that never stopped turning. "Naomi Sterling," he said, half smiling. "I thought you'd gone underground." "I did," I said, sliding the USB across the table. "But ghosts can still talk." He plugged it into his laptop, and as the files loaded, his expression shifted from curiosity to disbelief. "Good God," he muttered. This is huge. Your husband, the city board, the developers, this is a full-blown embezzlement ring." "Bigger," I said quietly. "Keep digging. You'll find more." He looked up at me. "Are you sure you want this out there? Once I publish, there's no turning back. People like this don't go down quietly." I met his gaze steadily. "I've already lost everything once. This time, it's theirs to lose." He nodded slowly. "Give me 48 hours. 2 days later, the city erupted. Every news outlet screamed the same headline: massive fraud scandal exposed, council official under investigation. Marcus's photo was everywhere, handcuffed, furious, defeated. But what most didn't know was that buried deep in the report, among the dozens of names and transactions, there was a subtle link, one Eleanor hadn't expected anyone to notice. A company name, Vance Development Holdings. Her shell corporation. By the time she realized what had happened, it was too late. She came to find me 2 nights later. I heard her before I saw her, the slow, measured click of her cane against the marble floor of the townhouse. When she stepped into the living room, she didn't look angry. She looked amused. "Well done," she said softly. "You finally stopped being predictable." I stood, heart pounding. "You played me. You built your fortune on the same corruption you claimed to fight." She tilted her head. "And you destroyed it. Bravo. But you didn't win, Naomi. You merely survived." "Maybe that's enough," I said. She smiled faintly. "We'll see. Survival has a cost. You'll discover yours soon." She turned to leave, but paused at the door. "You remind me of myself once," she murmured. "And that's not a compliment." Then she was gone, silent as she'd entered. Weeks passed. Investigations unfolded. Marcus faced charges, his assets frozen. Tiffany vanished from the city. Tia sent one message, "I'm sorry," and then nothing more. Eleanor Vance disappeared too, leaving behind rumors of offshore accounts and unfinished wars. As for me? I found a small apartment overlooking the city, quiet, modest, mine. One evening, I stood by the window, watching the sunset bleed into the skyline. For the first time in a long time, I felt something close to peace. Not victory, just peace. And then, from the mailbox downstairs, came a single envelope. No name. No return address. Just a wax seal, deep blue, pressed with the letter V. Inside was a single card with 5 words written in perfect, looping handwriting. "You still owe me one." I stared at it for a long time, my heart pounding, the shadows lengthening across the floor. Eleanor Vance was gone, but she wasn't finished. And neither, I realized, was I. The day the story broke nationwide, everything changed. Leo Price's article wasn't just a headline anymore, it was a weapon. Every television screen, every radio talk show, every social feed carried his investigation into the Willow Creek fraud. And this time, it wasn't just Marcus they were after. Buried halfway down the article, in a single paragraph few casual readers would catch, was the real bombshell. Preliminary evidence suggests the funds may have been funneled through shell corporations linked to Vance Development Holdings. Vance. Eleanor's name was never mentioned directly, but to anyone who knew her world, it was enough. By noon, 3 of her companies were under investigation. Her lawyers flooded the press with denials. Her social accounts vanished. Investors pulled back. And yet, there was silence from Eleanor herself. Not anger. Not panic. Just silence. "Mr. Wells called me that afternoon." His voice was sharp, strained, a tone I hadn't heard before. "What did you do, Naomi?" "I told the truth," I said. "You don't understand," he hissed. "That truth didn't just hurt Marcus, it hurt her. And she doesn't lose gracefully." "Then maybe she should have stayed out of the fraud," I snapped. There was a long pause. Then, quietly, "Eleanor doesn't forgive betrayal. Not ever. You need to disappear." He hung up before I could reply. By evening, Leo called. His excitement buzzed through the phone. "Naomi, you were right. The shell company doesn't just trace back to Eleanor, it's linked to 6 international accounts. I've got documents showing money transfers from the Willow Creek project to offshore banks in her name." I felt both sick and vindicated. "Are you sure?" "Positive. She's bigger than Marcus. He was just her puppet." His voice softened. "You've done something incredible, Naomi. You've taken down an entire empire. But all I could think of was Eleanor's voice, echoing in my head, control is justice. And now, she'd lost control. That night, I locked every window, double-bolted every door. My phone buzzed twice, unknown number, no voicemail. The third time, a message came through. Naomi. You've proven your courage. Now let's see if you can survive it. There was no name. But I didn't need one. Eleanor had resurfaced. The next morning, Leo's office was broken into. His laptop and hard drives were gone. I rushed there immediately. The police were already on site, cameras flashing. Leo looked shaken but alive. They didn't take money, he said. Just the evidence. Someone wanted it buried. My stomach twisted. Eleanor. He nodded grimly. She's cleaning house. We stood in the wreckage, the reality hitting both of us. Eleanor Vance wasn't retreating. She was retaliating. And the war I thought I'd ended was just beginning. 2 nights after Leo's office was broken into, the world around me began to shift again, small things at first. My front gate, which I was sure I'd locked, stood slightly open one morning. My phone, which I always left face down, kept lighting up with calls that vanished before I could answer. I was being watched. But the strangest part wasn't the fear. It was the quiet realization that I wasn't surprised. Eleanor always said, when you enter a game, expect to be played. Now I was learning what that meant. It started with Mr. Wells. He called unexpectedly one afternoon, asking me to meet him at a cafe near the old courthouse. The place was half empty, the air heavy with burnt coffee and faint jazz from a broken speaker. He looked worse than I'd ever seen him, tired, pale, his tie loosened, eyes red around the edges. You shouldn't have gone to the press, he said quietly. I didn't go to the press, I replied. I went to Leo. You said I could trust him. He rubbed his temples. And now Leo's office has been trashed, Eleanor's empire is bleeding, and Marcus is trying to cut a deal with the prosecutors. You've turned the entire board upside down. Good, I said flatly. Maybe it's time someone did. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. You don't understand. There are men above Eleanor, names you don't know. People who financed everything. If she falls, they all fall. That's why she won't stop until you're silenced. I froze. And what about you, Mr. Wells? Which side are you on? He looked at me for a long moment, then, very softly, said, both. Before I could react, a quiet voice behind me said, he's telling the truth. I turned. Darius stood there, still as ever, dressed in black. No emotion on his face. I stood up. You knew? You both knew she was dirty? Darius's tone was calm, as always. Eleanor hired us to protect her interests, not her soul. We followed orders. My stomach churned. And using me? Framing me? Was that part of her orders too? He didn't answer. Mr. Wells spoke instead, his tone steady but weary. Naomi, you were never supposed to go to jail. That was Marcus's move, not Eleanor's. She wanted him exposed, not you destroyed. That's a lie, I snapped. She let me rot in a cell. Wells looked down. She needed the public sympathy. It made your return believable. I stared at him, horrified. She used my humiliation to sell her story. He didn't deny it. The cafe door opened suddenly. A man in a courier uniform stepped inside, scanning the room before walking straight to our table. Delivery for Mr. Wells, he said, setting down a small envelope. Wells frowned, opened it, and went pale. Inside was a single photograph. It showed me, sitting at that exact table, talking to him and Darius. The timestamp read 5 minutes ago. Wells crumpled the photo, his voice dropping to a whisper. We have to move. Now. Darius's eyes flicked toward the window. A black sedan had just pulled up outside. Eleanor's people, he muttered. She's already found us. My pulse spiked. Found us? Why? I thought she wanted Marcus. She wants control back, Wells said. And you broke her pattern. She doesn't like chaos she didn't design. Before I could respond, the cafe lights flickered, once, twice, and then the power went out. Go. Darius hissed. He pulled me toward the back exit as footsteps echoed in the dark. Someone kicked the front door open. I heard the sound of glass shattering, voices shouting. We bolted into the alleyway. The rain had just started, sharp and cold against my face. I stumbled, but Darius's hand clamped around my arm, dragging me toward a waiting car. Wells climbed into the front seat, slamming the door. They'll track us. They already have, Darius said grimly, starting the engine. The car tore down the wet street, headlights bouncing off puddles. What now? I demanded. Wells turned around. Now? We decide who to betray. What does that mean? It means Eleanor isn't the only one with secrets, he said. She's just the only one smart enough to hide hers through you. But there's something you don't know, something that can end her, once and for all. I leaned forward. Then tell me. He hesitated. Not here. It's not safe. Darius's voice cut through the chaos. Then where? Wells looked at me. The archives. Marcus's private vault. If we can reach it before Eleanor does, we'll have everything, her accounts, her partners, her leverage. And if she gets there first? I asked. Darius's eyes met mine in the mirror. Then none of us will live to see the truth. The rain poured harder, drumming against the windshield as the city lights blurred into streaks of red and gold. Somewhere behind us, another car followed, its headlights too steady to be random. We didn't speak. Because we all knew who was inside it. Eleanor Vance was coming. The car skidded to a stop outside an old government archive on the outskirts of the city, a cold, forgotten building where paper records went to die. The rain had turned into a heavy storm by the time we got inside. The fluorescent lights buzzed weakly, flickering like they were tired of keeping secrets. Darius checked the corridors while Mr. Wells pulled out a keycard. Marcus's vault is 2 floors down, he said quietly. If the files are still there, they'll prove Eleanor's been laundering city funds for years. I followed them through the narrow hallway, heart pounding, rain dripping from my coat onto the dusty tiles. Every sound, the hum of the lights, the echo of our footsteps, felt like a warning. We reached the vault room. Wells swiped the card. The door unlocked with a soft click. Inside were rows of filing cabinets, old servers, and paper boxes stacked to the ceiling. Dust hung thick in the air. This is where Marcus kept everything that couldn't be traced digitally, Wells explained. He didn't trust anyone, not even Eleanor. Darius's flashlight swept across the shelves until he stopped at one labeled Project 47, Vance Holdings. We pulled the files out together. Inside were scanned permits, bank records, and dozens of signed authorizations, Marcus's, mine, and Eleanor's. But something else was there, tucked between 2 folders, a sealed envelope addressed to N.A. Sterling. My breath caught. I tore it open. Inside was a letter in Marcus's handwriting. Naomi. If you're reading this, it means the board turned against me. You always thought Eleanor was your savior. You never realized she was the one who orchestrated everything, our marriage, the company merger, even your job. You were never the prize. You were the insurance policy. She needed someone clean to hide her money through. That's why she chose you. Run before she finishes what she started. The paper slipped from my fingers. She set me up from the beginning, I whispered. Even before Marcus turned. Wells didn't look surprised. You were part of her design. She builds empires through people like you, good faces. Innocent names. Then when it's over, she lets the world destroy you while she walks away clean. The door suddenly creaked. Darius raised his gun, stepping forward. Two officers entered, badges visible. Hands up. Step away from the files. My stomach dropped. No, this isn't what it looks like. One of them cut me off. Naomi Sterling, you're wanted for questioning by the district attorney's office. Now. Wells turned pale. They're not here to arrest you, Naomi. They're here to offer you a deal. At the station, the fluorescent light felt harsher than before. A woman in a navy suit waited behind the glass wall, District Attorney Clara Bennett. Her expression was unreadable. Mrs. Sterling, she said when I entered. We've reviewed the files from the archive. You're in deep. Fraud, forgery, conspiracy to embezzle. I sat down, exhausted. Those signatures were forged. I was framed. We know, she said calmly. That's why I'm here. She slid a document across the table. Immunity. If you testify against Eleanor Vance. My pulse quickened. Immunity? Full protection, she confirmed. New identity, relocation, financial restitution. You'll walk away clean. But we need everything, names, accounts, evidence of her offshore assets. I hesitated. What happens to her? Bennett leaned forward. She'll never see daylight again. It should have felt like justice. It didn't. Why me? I asked. Why not take Marcus? He's the one who. Marcus is done, she interrupted. He's already trading names. But Eleanor's the spider. Cut her web and the entire network collapses. You're the only one who can finish it. I stared at the papers, my thoughts spinning. If I signed this, I'd finally be free. No more running, no more fear, no more sleepless nights wondering who was watching me. But it would also mean giving up the last piece of myself, the version of Naomi who fought back, who refused to be anyone's pawn again. And if Eleanor had taught me anything, it was that survival without power was just another form of captivity. I need time, I said softly. Bennett frowned. You don't have much. The deal expires in 24 hours. After that, you go down with them. She stood, gathering her files. Think carefully, Mrs. Sterling. Justice doesn't wait forever. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, the immunity papers spread across the table. The rain outside had turned to wind, howling through the cracks of the window. Darius texted once. Don't sign yet. She's watching. Then nothing else. I stared at the papers for hours, the pen in my hand trembling. My life, my freedom, reduced to a signature. Eleanor's voice echoed in my mind again. Pieces are only dangerous when they forget who's moving them. For the first time, I smiled. Because she was wrong. Pieces could move themselves. I folded the immunity deal and slid it into my bag, not to sign it, but to use it. If Eleanor wanted control, I'd give her something she couldn't control, a choice she couldn't predict. I'd make my own deal. One she'd never see coming. By sunrise, I knew exactly what I had to do. The deal from the district attorney sat on my kitchen table, untouched. The ink on the signature line gleamed faintly in the morning light, a quiet invitation to surrender. But I hadn't survived everything just to walk into someone else's cage. Eleanor wanted control. The DA wanted evidence. Marcus wanted revenge. What I wanted was power. And to get it, I had to burn everything. I called Leo Price first. He answered on the second ring, his voice low and wary. Naomi, I told you to lay low. They're circling. I'm done hiding, I said. Listen to me carefully. You still have copies of the offshore transfers we traced to Vance Holdings, right? He hesitated. Maybe. Why? Because you're going to publish them, I said. All of them, the bank names, the numbered accounts, the dates, everything. Naomi, that'll trigger an international investigation. You'll be implicated too. I know, I said. But when they dig, they'll find the trail leads to her, not me. She used my name as a front, but those accounts were hers. It's time the world sees it. He exhaled heavily. If I do this, I can't protect you. I'm not asking for protection, I said softly. I'm asking for exposure. There was a pause. Then, quietly, you've changed. No, I said. I finally became who she trained me to be. By evening, the story went live. Eleanor Vance's global empire under scrutiny, evidence of international money laundering surfaces. The headline hit harder than the first. This time, there was no hiding behind shell companies or silent partners. The leaks included screenshots of bank transfers, passport records, and coded ledgers connecting her to offshore accounts across Dubai, Geneva, and the Cayman Islands. It was brutal. Precise. Irreversible. And it had my fingerprints all over it. I didn't have long to breathe before my phone started buzzing nonstop, news outlets, blocked calls, reporters begging for statements. Then one message appeared among the chaos. Evie, you've learned well, Naomi. But you've mistaken bravery for victory. I froze. The next message followed seconds later. Look outside. My heart thudded as I pulled the curtain aside. Across the street, a black car idled with its lights off. A silhouette sat inside, unmoving. Watching. I backed away slowly. Then another text appeared. If you wanted to play my game, you should have studied the rules better. 2 hours later, I met Darius at an abandoned service station on the edge of the industrial district. The rain came down in waves, battering the metal roof like gunfire. He stood under the awning, his coat soaked, his expression unreadable. She knows, I said. She's always known, he replied quietly. You can't beat someone like her with exposure. She thrives in chaos. Then how do you beat her? He looked at me, his voice barely above the rain. You don't. You survive her. I shook my head. No. Not this time. I opened my bag, pulling out the immunity papers. This is my shield now. The DA wants her. I have the proof. If I give them the offshore ledgers directly, not the leaks, but the originals, they'll cut a permanent deal. I walk free. She burns. Darius's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes, admiration, maybe pity. You'd turn on her publicly? I already did, I said. Now I'll finish it. He nodded slowly. Then you'll need help getting to the courthouse alive. We drove through the city in silence. The streets were half empty, washed clean by the storm. Every intersection, every shadow felt like a threat. When we reached the courthouse, the lights were still on. Darius parked behind the staff entrance. Go. I'll cover you. I took a deep breath and stepped out. The wind whipped my coat around me as I ran through the side door and into the long, echoing corridor. My shoes squeaked on the marble floor. Every step sounded too loud. I reached the records office and placed the folder, the original offshore ledgers, on the clerk's desk. Deliver this to District Attorney Bennett immediately, I said. The clerk nodded, recognizing my name from the headlines. Yes, ma'am. I turned to leave, and froze. Eleanor stood at the end of the hall. No bodyguards. No cane. No fear. Just that same calm, glacial poise, the kind that made everyone else feel small. Naomi, she said softly. I told you survival has a cost. You should have listened. I squared my shoulders. You don't scare me anymore. Then you've grown, she said, stepping closer. But courage doesn't make you invincible. You think this ends with an article? A few frozen accounts? I have layers you'll never see. Then why are you here? I demanded. Why show yourself? She smiled faintly. To remind you that victory isn't destroying your enemy. It's becoming what they could never be. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a phone. She held it up just long enough for me to see the screen, a live video feed of Darius, held at gunpoint by two of her men outside. My blood went cold. "You want your new life," she said. "You want freedom? Trade me the originals, now. Walk away, and he lives." My heart pounded. Behind her calm eyes was the same cold genius that had orchestrated my entire downfall. The same woman who taught me how to think like her, and underestimate nothing. I met her gaze, steady and unflinching. "You taught me something, Eleanor. You taught me that power only belongs to those who dare to lose everything." Her smile faltered for the first time. "Naomi." I reached into my coat pocket, pulled out a small voice recorder, and pressed play. Her voice filled the hallway, the exact words she'd just spoken about freezing the accounts, admitting the offshore structure, and threatening Darius. Her eyes widened slightly. I held it up. "You're done." At that exact moment, the courthouse doors burst open. Officers poured in, weapons drawn. "Hands where we can see them." Eleanor straightened, her composure slipping just enough for me to see the fury beneath. "Well played," she murmured, lowering her arms as the officers closed in. "But remember, Naomi, I made you. And one day, you'll make someone just like me." Then she was gone, handcuffed, escorted out into the flashing lights of the waiting police cars. I stood there shaking, rain dripping from the open doorway, the recorder still humming softly in my hand. For the first time, Eleanor Vance was the one being dragged into the storm she created. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of the thunder. The courthouse felt different the day I went back, quieter, heavier, as though the building itself was holding its breath. Outside, reporters buzzed like flies, waving microphones, shouting my name. Cameras flashed as I passed through the entrance, but I didn't stop for them. Not today. Today wasn't about the world. It was about her. They led me down a sterile hallway toward the holding cells. The air smelled of disinfectant and steel. Every step echoed off the concrete walls. When the guard unlocked the door at the end, I saw her sitting there, Eleanor Vance. No makeup. No designer coat. No polished perfection. Just a plain gray jumpsuit and eyes that hadn't lost an ounce of sharpness. Even in chains, she radiated control. "Naomi," she said softly, almost warmly. "You look well." I stopped just inside the doorway. "I came for answers." Her lips curved slightly. "And here I thought you came to gloat." "I don't need to," I said. "You're already where you belong." Eleanor chuckled under her breath. "You really think this is the end? That because you handed me over to the wolves, the world suddenly makes sense?" "It's justice," I said firmly. "You destroyed lives. Used people like pieces on a chessboard. And you learned from me," she said. "Don't pretend otherwise." I clenched my fists. "I learned how to survive you. There's a difference." She leaned back in her chair, her gaze studying me the way a sculptor studies unfinished marble. "You remind me of myself when I started. Angry, righteous, certain that truth would save me. You'll see, Naomi, power is always borrowed, never earned." I stared at her, anger pulsing beneath my ribs. "You made me your weapon. You let me bleed for your war. And now you're trying to convince me that you were the victim all along." Her eyes glittered. "I never said I was a victim. I said I was inevitable." The words chilled me, but I didn't flinch. "You're not inevitable. You're finished." She tilted her head slightly. "Am I? Or am I just evolving? There's already a new fund overseas, a new name in my place. You think locking me in a cell ends the system I built? Darling, systems don't end. They adapt." Her calm confidence made something in me snap. "Then I'll keep tearing them down," I said. "Every one of them. I'll make sure people like you never rise again." She smiled faintly, not with pride, but with eerie satisfaction. "Good. That's what I wanted." I frowned. "What?" She leaned forward, her voice lowering. "Every empire needs a destroyer, Naomi. Someone to carry the fire when the builder falls. I made you because the world needed one more woman ruthless enough to stand against it. Her tone was so calm, so certain, that for a brief moment, I couldn't breathe. You're delusional, I whispered. You didn't make me. Didn't I? She asked. You wouldn't even exist in this world without me. You were the abandoned wife. The humiliated woman. I gave you purpose. No, I said quietly. You gave me pain. I turned it into purpose myself. Eleanor studied me, her smile fading. You think you're free because I'm here? Freedom isn't peace, Naomi. Freedom is loneliness. Wait until you see how quiet it gets when no one's pulling your strings. I took a deep breath, steadying my voice. Maybe I'd rather live with silence than live with your voice in my head. She laughed once, short, sharp, hollow. You'll miss me. No, I said. But you'll remember me every time you hear the name you tried to bury. Her gaze flickered for the first time, a hint of emotion breaking through the mask. You really do believe you've won? I don't need to win, I said softly. I just need you to stop. The guard knocked on the door. Time's up. I stood. Goodbye, Eleanor. As I turned to leave, she called out, her voice echoing through the steel bars. Remember, Naomi, every fire you light burns you a little too. I stopped for a heartbeat, then walked away without looking back. The sound of the door locking behind me was final, not just for her, but for the part of me that still feared her. Outside, the daylight was blinding. The storm had finally passed. For the first time, I felt its warmth without guilt. 6 months later, the city didn't look the same anymore. The skyscrapers still glimmered against the skyline, and the traffic still hummed like a restless heartbeat, but for the first time, I was no longer part of the noise. I'd moved into a small apartment above a bookstore in a quieter part of town, no cameras, no whispers, no ghosts from my old life. The scandal that once swallowed my name had become yesterday's news. Marcus Sterling was serving a 20-year sentence. Tiffany Chambers had fled the country, last spotted in Morocco. And Eleanor Vance, the woman who built and broke empires, awaited trial in federal custody, her frozen accounts turning her into a legend of downfall. But for me, there were no headlines, no reporters, no spotlight. Just silence. And peace. Every morning, I opened the windows and let sunlight spill across the wooden floor. I'd make coffee, feed the stray cat that had started showing up on my balcony, and sit by the window with a notebook, writing the one thing I'd forgotten to give myself all these years, closure. The world still whispered my name sometimes, but no one really knew me anymore. They knew her, the broken wife, the woman in the scandal, but that version of me was gone. I'd buried her. In her place stood someone new. Someone who had learned that survival isn't about revenge or justice, it's about reclaiming your story when everyone else has tried to write it for you. One afternoon, while shelving books downstairs, I heard the faint chime of the doorbell. A man in a postal jacket stood there, holding a small brown envelope. Delivery for Ms. Sterling, he said. I hesitated before signing the slip. Hardly anyone still used that name for me. When I opened it upstairs, I froze. Inside was a simple ivory card with elegant handwriting. You did well. Never confuse peace for victory. EV. For a moment, my chest tightened. I didn't know whether it was fear or nostalgia. Then I noticed something else, a folded newspaper clipping tucked behind the card. It was a report from Geneva, anonymous whistleblower exposes hidden offshore accounts linked to former financier. Eleanor's signature was at the center of it. She'd been exposed again, by someone inside her own network. I smiled faintly, realizing the irony. The woman who once believed she could never be beaten had trained too many people to think like her. Her legacy wasn't her empire. It was her undoing. That night, I took the letter to the balcony. The city lights shimmered below, the cat curled at my feet. I held the card over a candle flame and watched it curl, darken, and turn to ash. The wind carried the ashes away, scattering what was left of Eleanor Vance into the night. For the first time, it didn't feel like the end of a war. It felt like the beginning of a life I finally owned. I whispered softly to the stars, "You were wrong, Eleanor. I didn't become you." The wind brushed my cheek, cool and gentle, almost like an answer. I turned back toward the apartment, where the faint smell of coffee lingered and tomorrow felt possible again. Sparkles, if you enjoyed this story, please like the video, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. What would you have done in Naomi's place? I'd really love to hear your opinion. Big hugs, and see you next time.